Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant. My name is Niels Tudor-Winter and I'm the creator, editor and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. Juniors are a vital part of the whole EU funding ecosystem. They are the ones that secure the future of this sector, and every day the army of youth perform key tasks in all corners: grant consultancy companies, NGOs, associations, clusters, project support offices, and so on. I always had a heart for them, maybe because I have seen many being treated with a lack of consideration and respect in a system that unfortunately can have a tendency to chew and spit out youngsters. So I will slowly introduce more content for and about juniors. This week I have postdoc Marina Kliuchko in the virtual podcast studio to share her struggle to shift profession from the research side to the support side as research manager. It is an in-depth conversation where Marina opens up about the difficult elements of being perceived as a junior within research management while at the same time being respected for her research capacities. This one is for all the juniors and for the employers. Please enjoy. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. Today I'm going to do something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Going to zoom in on the area of juniors in this area of EU R&D funding. And I'm not a junior, so I'm reliant on a guest. And I have one with me, and Marina, welcome.
Hello. Yes.
Very nice to have you, and I look very much forward to this conversation. Now, before we do anything else, can you shortly present yourself?
Yes. So my name is Marina. I'm educated in biology, and I have a PhD in psychology. Behind that, it actually means I was doing brain science during my research career. I had a couple of postdocs after completing my PhD. And now I'm at a place of transition from research to research support and administration as a choice.
So as you can hear out there, we're a little bit in the intersection of career in the sector and research management and researcher. And so it's in that corner we are here, right? So if we just have a two-line fly-in on the conversation we're going to have here. So this is about choosing a path, no?
This is absolutely like that.
And the difficulties within this area to do that.
Yeah.
Especially within research, because as the paradox, research and innovation, working with new things and developing new things, but it can tend to be conservative in other corners and other layers of the field. Now let's just go directly into the first block here. So I've labeled it "Why Leave Research at the Moment of Realization." So in the pre-conversation and pre-talk we had up to this podcast, share that you wanted to make a track change. Can you share why?
Yes. So at some point in my career, I had to check with myself, what am I doing here in research, how I got there, and what I want to do next. Because after you completed your PhD and then you do a couple of postdocs, basically you need to decide, do you now try to pursue your own funding and get your own group and become a professor or like assistant professor, or you do something else, because there are just as many postdocs that you can do, and there's only that much of uncertainty you can live with. Somehow, even though I was doing research for many years, this path of becoming a professor didn't feel attractive. It sounded like it's the only way to go. Everyone around was considering it, and you nodding along and saying, yeah, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that, but it doesn't sit right in me. And then, of course, with a lot of self-doubt, why is that? Am I not as creative, not as scientific as others, or what? So yeah, basically the need to understand why I don't feel like continuing forward, how I got to research in the first place, that took probably the longest time to understand why. And my lesson learned from that is just, you can start research, you can go quite far with it, but it doesn't mean that's your destination, right? There are many aspects to research, and it's not like textbooks that, every researcher that gets into a textbook, they're so famous and cool and talented. But not everyone is like that, and it can be just a stage of your life, of your career that you do. It's a certain way of thinking, it's a certain way of approach. It's not a stamp you get on yourself that now you're smart. It's that's what people perceive often, but it's you can think in a certain manner, you can approach questions and problem solving in a certain manner, and you also have expertise in a field that goes in depth. So yeah, I had to realize that it is approach that you have rather than the destination. Yeah.
This is, I guess, if this is probably, if you take away the sector specific or area specific labels we have on this, probably what many people would say, this is whatever track change you want to make, there are some things that where people start to feel, wait a minute, this is not calibrating with what I want to do, or how I what my heart would be, when you're like, with my blood running faster in my veins, this is actually, I don't like this, or I don't like this, or I don't like this, but they maybe took a full education to, a lawyer or doctor or whatever, yeah. But realizing that I don't want to do this. It's want to do something else, but within this area, I know people from the research world and university world especially, and it is very, it's peculiarly conservative. There's it's actually a very tight frame that you put yourself in. You have your research area, the field that you have chosen, and then you have different steps, and it's like Jacob's ladder, right? It's very difficult to reach the next step. If you sin, you fall off. It's very easy to, because there are always others that want to move up that same ladder as you, and it's but everybody wants, to be a professor, or to get tenure, to not have to fight constantly for funds or grants or resources, to be able to continue down that research track that has been chosen. And people within research, they work so hard, because when you are in there, it's not just your research. Then you have to attend to students, you have to give classes, you have to make your own applications, proposals for getting that funding on the side of it. And then, besides from actually doing your research, yeah. So it's from being outside and not having that aspiration to do something like this. I always thought, why would you do? But I know it's because people have a big heart for it. In other words, I understand, I can see why you would try to do something else. I understand.
Yes, because it's also it's perceived like such a calling. Even if you apply for PhD, you sometimes join existing projects, but most of them will require you to at least reflect on the topics that the professor is posing you. So you come with this whole idea already that is larger than any other job application. And it is quite difficult to get into the field if you're outside. But if you are an active student, for example, and you get involved in some lab projects, pretty soon then you're becoming competitive also rather quickly, and you can move forward based on your inside knowledge of the topic. You already know your methods. So yes, it's a big idea you need to have, but it's also possible to sort of end up in the field rather than choose it. Because you are active, you're still interested in the projects you are running as a student, you have a good maybe relationship with your supervisor, and you work together very well, and you continue without having a pause to think what is it that you are doing. And I think that happens more often than not. It's exactly my situation, and I know that happens to others as well, that it's just you're running down or up the hill, but then you're losing your momentum because, higher you go, more difficult it gets, just as you said. And higher the level, more it's visible that some people are thriving and they would like to push their scientific ideas forward. And some others maybe are less of that, just not because they're worse, but maybe their strength in this process is somewhere else. It's again what I felt happened to me.
And you know what? You don't have to, if you don't want to share or don't want to compromise yourself. But I do know, I have a very good friend from back in high school. And he's been trying for years to make his way in the research world. And he's extremely critical of how people treat each other. So ethics and humanity and the things people are willing to do, the backstabbing people are willing to do towards each other within university research fields and in between and inside. It doesn't sound like a very healthy, psychologically healthy or mentally healthy environment to be in. If you know.
Yes. Well, of course, being in the research world, I also have a bunch of stories where things were not fair to people. Me personally, I was lucky to always be in good groups. So, of course, there are always pluses, minuses, people you can work with, people you prefer not to work with. But I was lucky to be in supportive environments. So it's not always just about the relationship and burnouts and PhD students get used in certain fields, or maybe in all of them sometimes. But even if that doesn't happen, you may still realize that it's not for you, maybe.
Let's bridge into the next section because to dig a little bit deeper. So and I have labeled that from doing research to supporting research. Yeah. So the transition. So what it means to do this shift. I've had other conversations with other research managers that made that shift and explained how difficult that was. But can you explain a little bit? Can you?
Yes, of course. So for me, supporting role is more comfortable just for the personality I have, because when someone else has an idea, it ignites me and I see it as a task to do. Like, okay, we want to do this, how we do that? And then my head starts working and I was like, okay, we can do this, we can do that. But when you are running your own project, you're often left alone with decision making, and you need, to drive it yourself, and it's becoming, in a way, a lonely process that I don't enjoy, because you can work in great groups, but the essence of research work is that you're doing something that is done for the first time ever, and it's you decide how exactly this little question is being uncovered, which angle you'll take. You could have a very experienced supervisor, but if they were doing this job, it would be explained differently, would be approached differently. So it's you who is doing that. And for me, it gives a lot of opportunity. So it's like a breath of everything you could do. But at the same time, it is limiting because you spend all of yourself just on one topic. But if you help others, especially on some system level, to drive, and then I feel it's more satisfying to me because I'm contributing to different areas, which I probably could not contribute otherwise because I come from a different background, but I know some mechanism of how to do certain things. So I feel like I'm contributing more if I'm supporting others. And if someone feels like they're being helped by me, it isn't the best thing to do.
Yeah. And it is exactly this, right? It is, you go from being geeking around with a often narrow field, that's the nature of research, no matter what corner you are in, to being a connector. That's what I always call the research manager. You are solving problems for the ones that are doing that research. So it's bureaucracy, it's administration, it's compiling data or resuming how to do this and how to do that, how to approach things. It's reading through. It's if it's proposal support, it's budgeting. It's looking through man months, stuff like this. So there's a fundamental. The research you did yourself, that's a core background understanding to be able to do the later. Because you know the world they sit in, you know how their vision is, so to say, their perspective, the prism they look through things. And then with that knowledge, you support them with realizing what they want through everything that they have no idea how to do. But it's too different. It's very different.
It is very different, and from experience, it makes huge difference if you work in a place where there are some administrative support to you, and when there is none. Because of course, researchers can do everything themselves and budgeting and so on, but you do it, seasonally.
Not all of them.
You do even if you learn how to do it. Very likely that next year you have to search and learn again, and it's just not a smart use of resources. So if institution or group investing resources into supporting researchers who should do what they are doing best, it makes a huge difference, and I value that when I look to different groups. It's already a good signal for me that some administrative positions are opening. I'm drawn to it. I want to work there because if they are putting their systems in place, that means, in my view, they're doing something good.
My name is Merete Mikkelsen, and I think you should really listen to the grant to get new ideas, hear solutions for other people, and get going with your projects. Good luck.
Bridge us perfectly well into the next block here, because now we're going to talk about a little bit about you. How it's labeled being young, experienced, and stuck in between, right? So what's the story?
Well, and I have to go back into that you can end up in research and with PhD and actually career in research without actually planning for it and just go with the flow. There's some cultural layer. I graduated from high school, when I was 17, and it's not accustomed to take a break here or go do something else. So you have to go straight to the university if you were something, like in just public opinion. So I went to the uni straight ahead. I started to study biology, to fear of my parents, because I meant to go to medical school, but I chose to go to biology. And at third year of my studies,
was that your teenage revolution?
It was, yeah. I studied in a specialized class, and all my classmates were going to medical school, and I was like, I'm not like them. I'm going to study biology. I never regretted the choice, by the way. So yeah, it was great. It was very general education, very classic. But anyways, in the third year, during one of the classes, there was just an invitation to come participate in brain research study as a participant. I came. I guess I asked enough questions and showed enough curiosity. I don't know how, but a month later, I was employed in this lab as a research assistant. And I started doing that research I participated in. I started contributing to it. It was very small group with nearly no funding. So as a research assistant, I had to do everything from, I don't know, keeping the lab clean to running analysis to supporting some external projects and doing HR and filling all the documents like travel refunds. It was everything possible. And I enjoyed it very much. So I contributed both to research activities and to educational activities. And I work with them through my bachelor's and through my master's. But that also means when I started master's, that it's the first time I was sort of doubting where it is I'm going. Because being in the lab, even before I started master's, I actually had all the data already collected and analyzed. There was enough to write my bachelor's and write my master's. So everything was same, and you're kind of doing it because everyone is doing it. You finished one, you go to another. And it even reached the point that I went to get a different education. I have a small little diploma saying I'm a travel manager. I never used it, but I was like, I need to find something else. Yeah. But then all changed. I got into international exchange. I went to University of Helsinki for a short stay. And same happened to me again. It was a short stay. And right after graduation, I was moving to Finland to work in the project and then doing my PhD. So yes, I got hands-on and I was in. It was also a great experience, good group. We worked together on a large-scale project. It probably wouldn't surprise anyone in 2025, but in 2012, it was a big project. Had to navigate through different labs and do a lot of collaboration. So I got on quite many publications because I was in this sort of data coordination and in the know how the project runs. So I got on many of the papers, and I felt like my own PhD in this process was basically a side project. I even had to switch a topic in the middle because I had one paper already how I planned it to be. And then I already had two papers from side projects that were more connected to each other. And I had to choose, like, do I combine the three that don't really go together and write something very far-fetched? Or I switched. So I switched and I created one more study and made a very nice, I think, work. At least I enjoyed the results and what we got out of it. And then I started my first postdoc, and that's how I moved to Denmark. I moved after my PhD supervisor because she also moved. And in that sense, when you don't change...
You moved because the advisor moved.
Yes, there were open positions, and I applied
Yeah.
because we
Okay.
worked together very well. Of course,
Yeah.
we had tons of unfinished business and open projects that needed to be finished. And this is sort of a plus and a minus to go into the same, like to work with the same people, because often postdoc, like it first proves that you can also do scientific work outside of your PhD, bring new ideas, but in fact, you often hired to finish what you started already. So you have a whole postdoc, but you are doing the same, and it's not always resulting in new projects. Well, for me, I actually had many new projects, so I had to finish my old ones, and also we had some new. And then the doubts started again. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What's next? Where am I going? And like the first thoughts appeared that probably the nature of work itself, because as I was growing, the lab work becoming less and less, and sort of organizational, applying for funding more and more.
Exactly what we started with.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was enjoying less, and I was thinking, okay, even if I become a professor, maybe I have a good profile, maybe I have a topic that I can continue working with, but then I have to apply for funding for myself all the time and have other poor young souls dependent on my grant writing skills. So I support my students, my PhD students, and I don't know, it didn't feel attractive to me, but yet I was still enjoying being in the research environment. So then I had to start thinking.
Yeah, because it sounds like very ambitious research, obviously.
Yeah.
So, and then still with that mindset, starting to think if it's actually many would think out now, my dear listeners, that wow, but it's quite impressive what she's been doing here. But maybe exactly for that reason, starting to realize the limits for yourself now.
Yeah. And then I applied for my second postdoc, but hiding behind this postdoc name, there was actually a project that was remotely research. It was an educational project. I worked at the DTU, Technical University here in Denmark, and we were exploring ways of disseminating knowledge about human hearing, that it can be relevant to different groups. For example, patients or students who are engineers. So people coming from different backgrounds, different understanding of the topic. How can we put scientifically grounded and relevant knowledge, but in the way that people will benefit and learn what exactly they need? It was a very, very exciting project. And I got a boost of energy again, because when I got hired, I was like, oh, I actually can do something else. It's not only one topic that I'm bound to. Some other people can see my work outside. And I enjoyed it really, really much. Unfortunately, it completely coincided with Corona, so the project did not go as planned. And that was kind of crucial for me, because there were so many new skills and new areas that I had to touch, that this sparring with partners would be very, very important. But I was deprived of it in the beginning. But anyways, changing a lab and working in a new environment, so coming from almost purely academic research to collaboration between industry and research, so where you can see that these people who graduate, they work in a very specific place in the hearing industry. Some of them continue in research, some of them continue in clinics, and so on. So that was very interesting experience to know that other world exists. Yes, and
we need to start to steer in this section. We need to start to bridge into you looking for something else. So we need to start because this is we're moving into the realization now that research management, support function, and so on. And what we discussed in the pre-talk was that because of everything you just explained, super experienced. Yeah. And what are the replies from people where you start to reach out? For this new role?
Yes, the very first job I applied for outside academia, they said their hesitation is that I will get bored.
Classic.
Yeah, I didn't even know how to react to that. Let me decide what's interesting for me, what drives me. But it wasn't out of ordinary. I heard it 2 or 3 more times after that as well. When you apply for some more administrative roles within research, I also heard from other researchers something along the lines that, researcher is forever. You'll always be thinking like that. Like, how do we know that you won't apply for a grant and get it and then just run off into the meadows of funded research? So a big part of applying for the jobs and going to the interviews was actually creating this narrative why I want to go into the support and why it's my choice, and I'm not doing it because I have to, but because I want to.
Yeah. So here we have one of also a generic problem. Actually, it's not just here.
Yeah.
It's this when you apply for jobs, and I know what I'm talking about. When you apply for jobs, because I went through a process before I got my last job with 15 months of applying for jobs. What narrative does the HR have in the head when they look at what you present? And they very quickly lock themselves on a narrative. And they can be very stubborn if you get to the interview to stay with that narrative that they have created, other than what you try to explain them.
Yeah.
And it disqualifies you. They could just not invite you to the interviews from the first, because it's just wasted anxiety, wasted hopes, wasted. It's because it seems very, very rarely it's possible to break that down.
Yeah.
And shift that.
But I think at this point I got my story straight. At least now I'm getting feedback is that yes, we're convinced you're here to stay and we see your value. But then comes a different complication. When you apply for administration roles, you can be excellent, but there will always be people who come with direct experience. And that is very hard to compete with. Because if people can join the role right away and do it excellently on operational level, then of course. And to be completely honest, I actually had high hopes for one job, and today received a call with this explanation, like everything was great, we see fit, but it's impossible to compete with these 2 other profiles who has this and that you don't have.
Now, for anyone out there listening to this, you go to the episode resume you have in your where you listen to your podcast. You click the link, and then you go into that website of mine where you find Marina's LinkedIn profile, and you go to that LinkedIn profile and you give her a pat on the back.
But at least it's still heartbreaking, because these positions you're applying for, there are not that many, and you're putting actual thoughts of how you can contribute and how you see your worth. It's not generic. It's you cannot just start applying and hope they'll invite you. No, it's always targeted application, and you feel great under the interview, and then it's unfortunately no when you expect it. And I'm getting more and more philosophical about it, less heartbroken. but still, it gets into you, and I'm just hoping that at least people getting to know that I'm out there. Maybe there'll be a little bit more research experienced, heavy role that matters, and then I can try with them again, because now I talk to people. I also know that I would like to work them, and when the opportunity comes, maybe we'll benefit each other.
It's always gonna sting.
Yeah,
it's always gonna sting. It's like this, and it doesn't change how old you get, because I'm almost 50 and it also stings. But now I decided not to apply for anything. I'm doing my podcast instead, and I feel so good about that. No. Are you a junior listening to this conversation with Marina? Well, I want to create more episodes zooming in on the conditions for juniors in this sector. So, if you have something that you want to share with my listeners, go to thegrant.eu, send me a message through the contact form, and we then discuss the content and angle for an episode. The Grant, there's so much to talk about. We have already now bridged into the next section here about the job market reality for junior research managers, and you just described that perfectly. Yeah. So it is exactly this. Research management, what the positive thing is that it is a growing realization on research organizations, but also RTOs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? In Denmark, you have FORS and Danish Technological Institute and so on. There's a growing awareness of the role and the importance to attract, to professionalize attracting external funding. So that's the good thing. But the flip side to that is, of course, what you just mentioned. Then the positions needs to be open.
Yeah.
Because you have I've been within this area for 17 years now, and you have, it's a niche, this EU funding corner, but you still have a solid amount of people. If you just look at Denmark, any given country in Northwestern Europe, you would have a certain amount of people that is working within that and has done it for many years, and that applies for these kind of position when they come up, right? So this is the wall you run into.
Yes, absolutely, and you know that from inside, it's university, so it's a public organization, at least out here, and money don't appear from the air. Every position has to be fought for or explained, so it's not that university sits on a pile of money and not willing to give it to me, because it's limited. It's a resource, and yeah. So you understand it, but it doesn't help with feeling frustrated.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they're not a course you can take, especially when you're just entering the field. I know which areas I am leaning to. So funding, advisory, it's something that attracts to me, or coordinating roles. So if I see something that is communication heavy, as in communicating research, I will not be applying, because I can do that, but not as my main task. Yeah, so I have skills, but I will not be applying. It's not the best way to use myself. So you cannot prepare. You cannot just take a course and it's like, here I am. I can do it all. And this is how I found your podcast and how I got in.
Yeah, that's good.
Because it sounded like being in the office or in the lunchroom and hearing colleagues discussing their problems, and you're sort of learning from it. And I merge myself, and it's often make me sound less naive, but actually that I know a little bit more than I otherwise would do.
This is one of the many reasons why
it's wonderful. It's a great idea,
right? It's to open up, to share what is the sector about, also take away the myths, take away the, what is it actually? How is it to in all kinds, write a proposal, or how is it to support? How is it to why is it difficult? What does it do to the anxiety levels when you write proposals? Stuff like this. It's very important for me that people, they can go and they can feel represented, so to say, and give them an audible pat on the back, as I call it. A moral support. Yeah. I work together with a collaboration with exactly an EU Horizon Europe project called RM Framework, and it's exactly about this, Marina. So things are happening out there.
I'm following closely. It is so important.
It is exactly that, to make training standards and so on, so you can actually make an education with standards. Yeah. So it's but that doesn't help you now. So about this, what can you do? Yeah, which choices can you make, or which exactly courses, or are you looking also at online things or online courses, or have you considered? Well, that's something that's maybe difficult for you because of your family, but moving to a different country. But you have moved.
Yeah, I have moved too, and this is in part why it was easier before to find a job, because I was not limited. First, I was completely single. I can do whatever I want. Then I got a supportive partner who was like, moving, yeah, okay, let's go. But now I have family, and it's completely different level of organization and financial responsibility, social responsibility, all possible. So for the first time, I've actually had to make a choice to stay, and that I have to, make my life where I am. Of course, making a choice where to live, I still only considered places with universities, because this is where I have more chances to get a job. That's where I want to be. I wouldn't say I find any course that could help me, but still there were few game-changing experience that I had. So first, I found it very helpful that if there are any courses that are not scientific in nature, but soft skills, you better jump on the opportunity, because you never know what you can discover about yourself, what kind of skills you can be discovering. So for me, this second postdoc, when I was doing non-research, it gave me many opportunities to take courses on scientific illustration. I will not become scientific illustrator, but I have skills that I otherwise wouldn't have. And then I joined bootcamp, entrepreneurship bootcamp for researchers. It was free. All it took me 4 days, and I learned so much about myself and about the way I work and what I enjoy. I did not expect that at all, but it was transforming experience. Just to understand that there's something else out there in the world, and you may even fit into that. That's how I also put innovation onto my I would like to do things. Yes, and then sparring with other people, talking to them. I was lucky to have a colleague with whom we started sort of semi-official mentoring sessions. So he was mentoring me, and it turned to be, useful for both of us. And through simple exercises, I was also able to learn what I want to do, what I don't want to do. So that was transformative to have a mentor, a person with whom you can talk.
Did you considering a private consultancy?
This is my next point. I was looking into career consultants. I used some at the university, but it was rather general. And also, when you don't yourself know yet what you want, it's less and less targeted help you can get. So more my own idea was crystallizing on what I want to do. Easier it was to find my consultant, but I was hesitating. It's like, maybe this person, maybe that. But then I found career consultant who is a researcher herself and working also here in Denmark. So everything was kind of clicking, and we had just one session, and it was helpful. I really by that time knew what I want to do, but now I could write about it with confidence, not just, I think I probably can bring this and that to the role. Now I'm like, yes, if I join this and that, I can give you. And during interviews, it's so much easier to answer the questions instead of saying, yeah, I can do this and I can do that and promise everything. I can say, yes, I'm best used for this kind of tasks. And if you want someone with this profile, it's probably not me. But it took a while. If 3 years ago you would say that I could go to a career consultant, I was like, what? I cannot do anything. Like, what are we even working with? Yeah.
I think I was actually meaning if you had considered joining a grants consultancy company, so a company that for fee, but thanks, because this was also very enlightening as a way of helping yourself. But have you considered stepping into a place where you offer services of mentoring, or is that it's very different? It's very different from research management, being a research manager. But you have some of the same elements.
Yes, you do, but I'm not enjoying solo work that much. So I would prefer to have a team. But I tried that a little bit. I was doing a short internship where I was helping create a funding strategy for the next year, and the topic is not even research. It's not at all. It's like social and urban development, and surprisingly, I could still navigate and create something. So even if it's
this is a matter of being a temper, liking to be in a commercial setting, selling a service, as you know, like, and not all. I don't like it. Absolutely, hate the grants consultancy myself. But there are many people that do like the that job or that.
Well, for me, it was still in public sector, so I'm very sold on like I can join innovation, but it has to be research based or still somehow connected to public institutions. But it's just nice that you can apply yourself even to the field you're not at all connected with. But this skill of reading through calls and seeing synergies in between some other projects and what you can offer and how it can work, it was also so rewarding just to work with it.
Actually, talking to you here, I think because I have a job and lead site on my platform, and actually I think I should put a little bit of effort into that to add people like you that are looking for something, profiles where people can check and see if it's something that they could use. We'll get back to that. Thanks. Let's move into the reflections. First, it's not easy to come forward like this, especially not when you're looking for jobs, and it's about searching a job is often about showing your feathers, and definitely not what's difficult and what's rough and so on and so forth. So, motivation for sharing openly.
As many topics, there are stigmas around, and if we don't talk about it, it will never get solved. And the loneliness is still an issue, right? So talking to others one-on-one was very transformational for me. Just not feeling alone and knowing that other people that you consider brilliant and looking up to, they have their own doubts, they have their own struggles. And it's a form of self-help to begin with to talk about it, but then you can also help others. Because when you're transitioning, you don't want to feel like a failure, right? You start doubting why it didn't work for you in research. Maybe because it's not your thing, and there are other things to do. You just didn't have time to think. But also we all know that demands on the researchers are growing, because world is speeding up, new skills, and you have to be excellent at everything, and you get lost on this journey. So if you can help each other to discover your worth, it is great. And that it's also important to put awareness on career development of PhD students before, during, and after. It's not only that they can run excellent research, but they are not, super educated outcasts, but people who have invaluable set of skills, and they can apply themselves in different situations, and we all benefit from it. Maybe I feel it's maybe a little bit easy in technical universities when you can actually see people working here and there. But if you're not from a technical university and you hear about someone who went to industry or started a job outside of academia, they're sort of urban legends, everyone talking about them, but you never meet them because they don't come back, and you're like, oh. And then you start imagining, oh, this person must be outstanding and they have the skills that you will never reach, and you don't know how to do it. And all you need to do probably is to know that it is an option and get yourself out there early. It doesn't mean you have to do some special internship, but just talking, considering, and imagining yourself doing what you like doing, not being limited by this PhD letters that, I don't know. It's very amazing to be in this journey, but how it stands now,
but that's not how. That's not how you feel. Amazing when you get the job.
Yeah,
because it's tormenting when you're not. It sits on your head all the time. It literally does. It's constantly sitting on one's head. Every single minute of your waking hours. That doesn't change also when you're old. I can tell you, it does. And it's then when you then get that job, because you will get a job. When you get that job, then it will be. You will have learned these things that we're talking about in this conversation here today. And then you will feel at ease with that, with a calm stomach. But right now, you just got to know today. It's the worst days throughout that process. It's a...
Actually, I somehow got reminded of a story, because as a job searching person in Denmark, they give you different offers. You go to job fairs, and I went to job fair one time, and there's nothing really for you. You talk to people, and they open their eyes like, oh, I don't know. And there was one corner, they were offering a lab training to become a lab analyst. And I was like, that actually could be interesting, because I enjoyed pipetting during my biology studying. Maybe I could do something like that. And I come to talk to a person, and like, oh, what's your background? And I say like, well, I'm a biologist and I have PhD. And the person got starstruck, like basically, you have what? and after that, you cannot continue the conversation, because they already think something of you, and like, yeah, maybe I have a title, but I want a job. And I want to have skills that will be useful, that I can go to a job place and maybe do this biological analysis of something and feel happy.
I think one of the, where I started this off, this, what we're talking about here and what you have just mentioned, the loneliness. I think many young researchers, but also juniors within this sector, I think many of them feel low.
It is a very lonely pursuit, not only in the decisions you take, but yeah.
So not only in research management, research corner, but also throughout this whole ecosystem of small grants, consultancy companies, where you're just expected to work around the clock.
Yeah.
And you don't really talk about it because you don't want to be fired, because you don't want anybody to think you cannot push through or stand, stand it, and and then you just destroy your personal life. You don't see anybody, don't do anything. You just work. And even worse for NGOs throughout Europe, Southern Europe, Eastern Europe, so NGOs that are reliant on funding.
Yeah.
And these people that just, if they don't get the grant, they lose their job. Stuff like this, And again, nobody wants to look like they're not able to do it, so nobody talks about it. I appreciate a lot that you stepped up for this.
Well, it's it seems like you're alone, but when you start talking to people one-on-one, I haven't really yet met a person who would say like, oh, I cannot relate at all. So just people don't talk about it because, of course, imposter syndrome and competition within the place. Even if the environment is friendly, you're still competing for the same resources, and it can get so dramatic, especially like I'm a couple who are from the same field, and if they want to move to the same country, it's nearly impossible because they cannot compete with each other for the same roles. And everyone is struggling. There's now
then they need a city big enough with enough universities.
Yeah, I think it's became more open now about talking about mental health in academia. It's not nearly enough what's happening, but still the conversation is starting. What I bring here, we didn't even talk that much specifically about mental health, but what I'm talking here about is that equipping researchers while they're in academia with skills that are relevant to the world outside of it, so you don't feel as lost, that you feel your value, that you're not, that, I don't know, you are a Lego piece, maybe you're a very specifically shaped Lego piece, but you still fit. You'll find the thing where you can click on.
On that note, the final segment I always have, Marina, the toughest challenge. The grant. Now, I put navigating this landscape as a junior entry, but what do you have? What's the toughest challenge?
Throughout, the toughest challenge was understanding what skills you actually have.
Yeah.
Yes. And for me, it was in the lowest desperation of I don't belong here and people just don't understand, imposter syndrome. I was like, no, come on. You got here so far. What made you here? What skills you relied on to get so far. And that's when I discovered, like, okay, I'm not so bad at organization. I'm quite good at, solving problems and getting things done. And what brought me here is that I can be relied on when delivering a task, for example, or I'm good at seeing how certain projects fit or do not fit into overall scheme, and piece by piece starting building, like, I can do this, I can do that. And that took awfully long time. I wish it was shorter. I wish it was less painful. So this is the challenge, is self-discovery.
But it's exactly that. The last thing, it's a personal process.
Yeah.
It's also psychological.
It is.
It's a mental process. because it down to the root is what, it's very close to how we perceive ourselves, who we are, what we do. Yeah. So it becomes, it's some dangerous questions probably through the process that you shouldn't ask yourself, because of course you can, but I understand perfectly.
Yeah. It's always a tough question.
And then you discovered the grant.
And then I discovered the grant. And it was a great discovery, and I'm recommending it to people.
Yeah, but really, it's everybody listening out there, and go, because there's so much info, there's so much content and supportive content on my website. So go and check it out. Which is a fine bridge to the landing the plane here. So I'm just gonna do that before we say goodbye. So dear listeners, thank you so much for thank you so much for listening to the end. I really hope that you have enjoyed this, and that it has given you some reflections, and that you feel supported out there if you're in the same situation as Marina here. I would like more juniors, so if you're a junior with any corner, please get back to me. By all means, reach out. I'd love to have you on board. Because you're difficult to get in, because you're exactly what we talked about. You don't want to share your what can be perceived as weaknesses. But don't worry, I will do everything I can to prep you and do everything fine. No. Go to my website, thegrant.eu. You'll find all the content that I have there. More than 200 episodes within all corners of the EU R&D funding. And while you're there, go to the bottom of each page. There you'll find the online form. You want to support me, a humble independent podcaster, so subscribe to my email list. So thanks in advance for that. And finally, of course, connect with me on LinkedIn and go and like the grant page. That is where the fun happens, and that's where the flow is. So do that. And now, actually, yesterday I launched my Instagram account, because I do want to share more photos and videos of what I do, to be more relatable for people, to just share the world as a podcaster. So you will find the link on my website, my handle. But see if I can remember. I just did the Grant Podcast, so it's actually quite simple. You should be able to remember that. If you search for the Grant on Instagram, you'll find it. That's that. Now, Marina, let's say goodbye to dear listeners. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grant. All the Grant episodes have their own site on the Grant website. You'll find a link to the episode site where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you'll find a link to Marina's personal LinkedIn site. Next week, I have a very interesting conversation about the role of impact and the constant struggle for projects to actually get the results out there. The eternal problem. You can indeed look forward to that.